Okay, Jamie, thank you so much for doing this. I'm super excited to talk to you. I think this is going to be a really fun one. There's a bunch of things I want to ask you about. Of course, the 2006 main event, some of the charity poker events that you've been involved in that I've had the opportunity to go to. And of course, we're here at WSOP Paradise. You're still very involved with the World Series of Poker. You do things in Hollywood too. So much to talk about. Let's go all the way back, though, because you were born in Kansas City, pretty far away from Hollywood. Is that right?
I was. I only spent a year there, so I have no memory.
Okay, no memory. So you did, I think you went to New York City after that, Manhattan, and so I guess it makes more sense getting into the show business world. But yeah, what brought you to New York City?
My mom got divorced when I was 1, and we had no money, and so she lived with my grandparents in a room in their apartment in New York City. And so as a child, you don't really know if your parents, have money, don't have money, as a really young child, right? All you know is that you just have a lot of love. And so I was very lucky to be able to grow up with both my mother and my grandparents. So it was really cool. And back then you could also be safe walking on the streets as a kid. Now no parents are allowing their children to walk around Manhattan by themselves, but I was okay, and so I loved it. I moved to New Jersey when I was 10, and that let me play a lot of organized sports, and it was a great experience. I was very fortunate to have a really fun childhood and play some poker. My parents and my mother, my stepfather, my grandparents, they were all card players. So we always had games going on in the house. Not really cash games like you would think traditionally, but more like games for fun, like Monopoly and things like that. And then sometimes we would play cards. And so I just really learned the game from my family. And then summer camp, I remember playing with all of my friends, and we would play for candy. Candy was kind of the currency away for the summers, and yeah, I would try to win everybody's candy and then give it back to them over the summer. And so it was an interesting way to grow up, but poker had always been part of my life, so I loved it. It was never really about money. It was more about the competition aspect of it.
So yeah, it sounds like poker, you started at a pretty young age. When did it become more than just playing with families? Did you ever, go to Atlantic City, or when did you first go to a casino and play?
I did. I would say maybe when I was about 21 and I was living in LA, I went to the Commerce Casino, was the first place I ever went, and then I went to the Bicycle and then the Hustler. And I would play in the cash games, but I would also play in their daily tournaments. And I just seemed to have a certain style that worked really well with that group of players. There were a lot of really famous players playing. LA was kind of the hub of, it's one of them now, but it was so much more than Las Vegas. Back then, I would say this is the early 90s. And so Chris Ferguson and Doyle Brunson and Johnny Chan and Phil Ivey and all of those guys were basically, a lot of the old school pros kind of lived in and around Los Angeles. There were more poker rooms, more poker tables in Los Angeles than anywhere else in the world at that time. I don't know what the stats are now, but it was the best place to be if you really wanted to learn, to me anyway, the best place to be in America if you really wanted to learn from a lot of the great pros. And so, I learned a lot of lessons. I lost a decent amount of money trying to take shots. I would win these smaller games and then try to go above my head and play, way too high stakes. And it cost me a decent amount of money, but thankfully I could afford it. And it was an incredible lesson. And that's how I met Chris Moneymaker and Johnny Chan, and started doing a little business together. And before the internet was keeping track of results and things like that, and before there was, the biggest, when the World Series of Poker was still at Binion's. So it was kind of the time before there was the big boom, before Chris Moneymaker won and everything changed. there was so much kind of, I would say, camaraderie and community, and not that it doesn't exist now, it does, it's just different. And it was a lot of people kind of helping each other grow, because there were only a few books. There was Doyle Brunson's Super System. There were David Sklansky's books that were the most famous. There were others, but those were the ones that were really widely known. There were no videos. I think the first video series that I ever heard about was on DVD that maybe Howard Lederer put out. And there was just nowhere to learn. So you basically had to teach yourself. And you also then, if you were lucky, you could watch some of the greatest players play. And that's where at the time I was an agent for actors and writers and directors, and poker players were just becoming celebrities. So I made a kind of a trade with Johnny Chan, and I did a little something with Chris Moneymaker and Chris Ferguson, that I would help them, get to a higher level of fame, maybe, book deals, TV deals, movie deals, anything that I could help them with in exchange for letting me kind of hang around and watch. So Johnny and I did that, when Chris Ferguson and I did that, where they wouldn't really teach me, but they would let me watch. And so I could figure out, oh, okay, so maybe I was playing on 3 levels. These guys were playing on 5 or 6 levels. And then there's 7 or 8 or 9 levels that you need to play on to really, be playing above the rim. So I was really lucky that I could just watch and figure out what I didn't know. Now, there's unlimited videos. There are unlimited courses and books and almost every piece of information on poker, GTO, right, and solvers and anything. If you want to be a great poker player, you can just focus for a year, where it used to take us 10 or 20 years to play live. Think about how many hands you can get in live, not that many. So for the amount of experience that you can get now, the players now, their trajectory is just 10 or 20 times what it was for us, even though there were a lot of really smart, really talented people back then, but there was no access to anything other than your own play. And then the internet started having live. I think Party Poker was the first one that I knew about. I know there were others before that, but I think Party Poker was the first one that I kind of saw online. And that kind of changed everything. Imagine if there was no such thing as online poker, and then all of a sudden you could play every day, all night if you wanted to online as a poker player that could only play when I could make it to a casino. That changed everything for me. And so that was really exciting. And that was kind of in the early 2000s. And then your trajectory of education started going like this, because I could play, 4 tables at once and really understand and learn from a much bigger kind of set of data, where playing live, they used to tell us to take notes in a notebook, right? And so then we would compare hands, and it was very archaic, I guess.
And so also at some point, you talked about the game changing and the educational tools growing and things like that. But back in the 90s, I'm guessing Hold'em wasn't the big game. It was probably limit, stud, things like that.
I would say when I was growing up, it was always 5-card draw with some stud, 5-card stud, 7-card stud, limit certainly around. I believe that maybe around 2000 to 2002, right around those years, is when we started watching No Limit Hold'em on television. That's when it really changed. And the first show was actually called Late Night Poker from the UK. And it was Devilfish, Tony G, all those guys, and Marcel Lusk, and that's the first time that we thought, oh my God, you could see their whole cards. And then the World Poker Tour and the World Series of Poker and all of that. But I think the first show was from England. And anyone who's a poker fan like me, it just blew my mind that I could actually watch, so that I felt like I could learn from them. It turns out it wasn't the greatest way to learn, because back then, they were only showing you highlights. So if you only see kind of the way that if you only watch me in my run through the World Series of Poker, you figure I just flopped the nuts every hand and that I only played the worst cards. You know, they picked out a few interesting hands. Of the 2,000 hands that I played, you saw maybe 10. That's not the progression of a poker game, and that doesn't teach you anything about, it's never really about the hand that you're in. It's about everything that led up to that hand, how the other players are playing, right? The energy of the table, the flow of the table, and everything else other than that one specific hand that, of course, you know, if you play it right. But if you only are looking at that in a vacuum, it's not a fair representation of how to learn how to play poker. Because you think, oh, well, then that's what a professional did. That's what I... But they were doing that based on all the other information that happened for the 10 hours before that you didn't get to see all of those hands and realize why. Because you'll say, oh, he shouldn't have bluffed him in that spot. But how do you know that he, you know, that it wasn't maybe the right play because of everything that led up to it, right? So it was a pretty bad way to learn from the best, or at least the best that they were showing on television. But we didn't know that. We just figured, oh my God, like we're learning how they do things. And so it was an exciting time, but I think a pretty misleading time for a lot of, let's say, recreational players that thought, well, I saw Phil Ivey play A7 strongly pre-flop when he was first to act, but they had no context of why he was doing that and who he was playing against, and it might have been the right play for him. And also, maybe he wants to get more, you know, flops. But if you're just a regular beginning player trying to learn the game, that's a terrible way to play. You're going to put yourself in the worst position. But it's so hard. Who's there to tell them that? There were no commentators saying you shouldn't do this. It wasn't as in-depth as it is now. And so I really appreciate for anyone new that's coming into the game, and when I say new, in the last 5 or 10 years, anyone who really wants to learn, there's an unlimited access now. What an incredible time. Now, it's also very difficult for an average player to get through the kind of fields that you have to get through, where the level of play, looking back on what we used to get away with, and you know, you could be a just above average player and do really well back when. Now, if you're just above average player and you don't pick your games properly, you're probably getting crushed, because there are just so many incredibly sharp, smart, young, maybe not even young in age, but meaning new to the game players, that, you know, my greatest advice when people ask me, they think that they're asking me about how to be a better poker player, but I try to explain to them that there are so many things surrounding the game that are just as important, because yes, you need to learn the game, of course, but once you learn the game, understanding and having awareness of where you stand and how good your game is and your game selection and what position you put yourself in, and don't try to play above your head. Don't be like me. Don't try to play higher stakes than you should. Don't, you know, you have nothing to prove to anyone. It's okay to play lower stakes and learn as long as you need to learn to get to that next place. And yes, of course you should play with players who are better than you, but not for money you can't afford. You should always have groups of people that you can talk to and talk through hands. I've always been lucky to have a community. I have so many great friends that are really smart about poker and gaming and analytics and theory and things that relate to poker, but maybe aren't even necessarily about poker hands. So yes, the math and the psychology and all of that, you have to get that down. But there's just so much more to a poker game. Once, let's say everyone has the same education. Now what is it about? Now it's about hydration. And so especially if we're playing tournaments, if you're playing for 12, 14 hours a day, be hydrated and make sure that you take snacks and make sure that you are getting good sleep, right? And make sure that you're eating well that whole week, and make sure that you're focused, and make sure that there are so many things that are going on at the table that if you only pay attention to you and your chips and your cards, you're missing so much. And so I try to help as many people as I can learn this game. And I think I'm a really good teacher to new players. You know, there's not that much that I can help with players who are already at a certain level. I don't propose myself to be the greatest coach of that kind of super advanced level. I love learning from all the best players. I'm constantly on a journey of educating myself, trying to be better every time I play, trying to be better most times I play. Sometimes it's purely for fun, like we're doing out there. I'm not getting any better out here, but I'm having a blast. And so many old friends are here, and it's so nice. It's almost similar to that feeling that we call the summer in Vegas, our summer camp. It's like, you know, other people go away sometimes and meet the same kinds of people, have the same kind of community when they go on certain vacations. We all get to see the same, friends, and it's just so nice. And so this is like a mini version of the World Series of Poker in Vegas, even though some of the tournaments are even bigger than some of the tournaments that are in Vegas. It's just so nice that we now have another kind of tent pole that we know that, all right, there's going to be the World Series of Poker in the summer, World Series of Poker in the winter. There are circuit events around the year, and then of course there are other, World Poker Tour and so many other tours that give poker players such a great opportunity to play and learn and have fun. And I think we are experiencing a pretty big third boom of poker, but it's not talked about a lot because it's not on television all the time. People think that it's not as popular. That's not true, right? Tournaments are breaking records all over the world. There's more people playing poker now than there were whatever booms you want to think. Is it the moneymaker boom, when I won, whatever boom you want to call it. We know there was the downtime after because of the UIEGA and making it illegal online. But everything is coming back now. It's just different because it's not on TV as much because PokerGo owns most of the shows and they put them behind a paywall. So professional poker players, really big fans, will pay for that. But I think the general consumer that just enjoys watching poker on TV once in a while is never going to pay for PokerGo. Right? They want to see it for free. There's too much content available for free. They want it on ESPN kind of thing, like we used to have it. They want to be able to see, just casually when they're in a bar, they want to be able to see. They're not going to necessarily sign up for a pay service. Now, really, dedicated poker players will, but I think that's changed. And PokerGo is a great service. I just think that it's stopped some of the major kind of sponsorships and masses coming into poker because it's not so readily available anymore. And then people think that we're not going through a big boom, but we are.
What are your thoughts, sticking on that, what are your thoughts on paywalls? Because as someone in media, I can see it both ways. I've interned and worked at newspapers and understand that, advertising models and profit models are changing. But also as a consumer, I know that it's very annoying to run into paywalls and people just, want content for free. So I really do see it from both sides. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's good or bad for the game?
I agree with you. No, it's both. It's for what they're trying to do, it is so expensive. And if they don't have subscribers, depending on advertisers to come in, who may or may not come in because they don't see the boom, they don't see poker the way that we do. And the general average kind of sponsor that would come into any kind of content sees poker sometimes as adult content or alternative content or gambling content. They don't see it as the game that it really is. And I think that it's still going to take some time so that when more traditional sponsors are coming in, as long as they can earn and perform, PokerGo is not supposed to be there to fund, our pleasure, right? It's a business. Like, it has to make a living. It has to be able to pay all their employees. And so I feel for their situation. I don't know what the answer is. I just think that there is a void and that we need to fill it with great content, that there could be so much more poker content done in different ways. The poker content that's out there is great, but it doesn't mean there couldn't be more and different. So when they did things like Game of Gold was a great idea. and these documentaries and different series. And I know I'm working on a couple of things, and I know that the World Poker Tour is doing things, and World Series of Poker and GG, and I think that over the next couple of years things will be different. And I think that once sponsorship starts coming in more regularly from the larger sponsors who realize that we are a community of 60 million people in America, 200 million people across Europe, 500 million people if you count China and Asia. It is a massive, underserved, like sponsorship, advertising kind of, right? You're trying to reach eyeballs. Golf has 20 million people in America playing. Nowhere near as many because it's so accessible. Poker, you take out a deck of cards, we're playing poker. Golf, you got to get the clubs and go to the club and go to the private, all of that. It's amazing. And look at all the sponsorship money that's coming in to golf, right? It's billions of dollars where we just don't have the standard sponsors yet in general that are coming into poker. But I think that's going to change. I think that it's a really difficult decision when you have valuable content on whether you should charge for it or not. I don't know. I know that there are always the diehard fans, but I would hope that there's a way that you could do it so that you don't have to, so that it's available maybe on a channel that people are already paying for. So you're already paying for Netflix. Maybe there could be poker content on Netflix, that kind of thing, right? So that it's not really behind a paywall, even though you have to have a Netflix subscription, but there's 500 million of those. So at least there's a built-in audience for that kind of thing. But if it's just behind a paywall, it makes it very difficult. I know PokerGo gets really good numbers, but it's a really tough model for them to be able to produce and spend the kind of money that they want to spend and have all the shows that they want to have. And I know, I speak to people all the time and they say, where are all the TV shows? And I say, just go to PokerGo. And they, well, I did, but they want me to pay for. So, I think poker is the kind of thing that is so appealing to a casual viewer that is just not going to pay. That I think there has to be a version of maybe there could be two versions, right? That you could have everything, but maybe you could at least just watch the World Series of Poker, and then you just can't watch the old ones and the reruns yet, maybe, or I'm not sure what the answer is to all of that, but I hope that poker becomes more accessible because it's such a beautiful game and it's such a great thing to teach children, not the gambling part of it, but the risk and reward, and that everything we do in life relates to poker. Everything we do is a decision that you have limited information on that will affect your life, meaning so if you have cards that this is your life, right, in the pot, and it's your risk and reward and everything that you're doing is going to affect everything else, right? So every decision you make affects future decisions that you're making. And we do live our lives in series of bets, if you want to call it, right? I'm betting that I'm choosing to walk across the street because I'm betting I'm not going to get hit by a car. I'm going to wait 10 minutes to go to the bathroom because I'm betting that I can hold it, right? Everything we do is basically a bet, whether you want to admit it or not. You don't have to call yourself a gambler, but everything that we do is a series of bets, right? It's a series of decisions based on limited information. And that's what a poker game is.
That's really great. I usually like ending these interviews with the question, what's your favorite life lesson from poker? But hearing that life as, a series of bets, I think that's a pretty strong metaphor right there. That's a good one. So sticking on getting the masses into poker, I will say definitely personally, and I think for most people, the clips that get them into poker are probably something from your main event run, Chris Moneymaker's main event run, maybe like 2005 Mattisau, Greg Raymer. There's just something very special, maybe even, I think magical is even like a good word to use, just about that era. And what do you think that was? Do you think it was the style of play back then? People were still figuring it out? I don't know. What do you think made that era so special?
I think it's a combination of things. One, it was still relatively new. So new and exciting, and it was a game that people hadn't all figured out so perfectly, as you mentioned, that maybe because people weren't such masters of the game as they are now, it is not interesting to watch two super wizards never say a word to each other and battle it out over ace king versus queens. I think a lot of people have seen these things already. You need to have characters. Everything is a story. And right, we're human beings. We live on stories, and we tell each other stories, and we live our lives through movies and TV shows, and it's all storytelling. And so now if you're watching poker and there's no story to it, you have to be a die-hard poker player to care about those hands. But the masses, which is where we have to appeal to if you want to keep growing, they appeal to the drama of it, to the stories, to the characters, that there are heroes and villains. And some of us can be looked at as both heroes and villains, right? I have people who think that I was the hero. I have people who think that I was the villain in the same exact situation. And so there are a lot of movies like that, TV shows, right? You could see the gangster, you could see him as the villain, and some people see him as the hero, right? So there are heroes and anti-heroes, and there was something kind of for everyone. And so I think they also, the speech play and the table talk and allowing us to interact more with each other, once they changed that rule, it made it very difficult to make it as exciting as it used to be. And so when you had characters like we had, and you allow them to go, it can really create some very interesting kind of drama. And also, I think the ranges were so much wider because, as you mentioned, people were not as good. And so a lot more crazy things would happen. You don't see people making crazy plays like that very much anymore. Maybe 1 out of 100. But back then it was like every other hand, people would do something crazy. And there was something to watch. And so I believe that we can bring that back. I think that kind of old school enthusiasm, I think people understood how excited we were to be there and how excited we were to play. And a lot of the most successful players now, I don't believe that they enjoy it as much as we were enjoying it. They look at it as, they take it so seriously, which is smart. But their job is not to entertain the public. I think we understood there was more of a responsibility to entertain people, and that it wasn't just about us. And that in order to grow this beautiful game, which is going to be great for everybody, we had to do things that maybe weren't in our best interest. Every time I play on television, I know I'm not playing the way that I would play if I was playing privately. You try to give something to the audience, and you try to, you're not a performer, but in a way it is a performance. And so, we are similar to actors, or let's say prime characters on a reality show, where they're putting it on for, you watch reality shows, it's not exactly reality, it's heightened reality. So they put themselves into situations and then make those situations more interesting. But imagine in a reality show, if people, as they do sometimes, just sit next to each other and never say a word for half an hour because they're just, on their phone doing their own thing. That's reality, but it wouldn't be good television. And so they understand that there is a responsibility for the audience. And so I think that maybe, there was more of an interest back then to create characters. Again, I think that we can get back to that. And I think that poker can be really exciting on television again. I hope that I can be a part of that happening. I would love to watch. I'm a fan first. I was not a famous poker player when I started. I was just a fan of, and I was a fan of those characters because, they were good players, but they were also so interesting. And the drama that was happening between them was so interesting. You need that in order to be interested as a fan. And so I'm a fan. I love watching these shows when they're interesting. But if it's just about the poker play, whatever situation, we've probably seen it. Now, poker changes every couple of years, maybe every year now. And now with AI and solvers and GTO, it's going to change every 6 months. You have to kind of change your game and adjust to how everybody else is playing. But there's only so much of the same type of very dry poker that I can watch and be excited about. I think that there's a great opportunity, and I believe that there will be a lot more really interesting poker content coming.
So that reminds me, you did mention that you maybe have some projects in the works, some poker-related things. Anything you're able to tease?
Yeah, so, I've always been involved in the entertainment business, but for the last 20 years, I'm much more on the finance side, where I wasn't getting very involved in any of the creative, which I love, but it was more about helping movies and TV shows get made on the financial side of things. Doing it as a job. And in the last few years, I've been much more involved in the creative side of things so that we can both help finance movies and TV shows and content, and also have a hand in the creative side of things, where I never felt like I was getting the best projects that had poker involved. I would get a lot of poker scripts, but they weren't very good. And they didn't necessarily kind of fit for what I thought should be, millions of dollars put into them for people to risk. And so I think now there are a few projects that I'm very lucky that people think of me when they think of poker and TV and film, that my name usually comes up in some way or another. And so I've been getting these really great scripts and projects and helping to develop some things that would be really good for the poker community. No, nothing that I can talk about yet, but it's a very exciting time. And I hope that the next time that we talk, that there will be things that are already happening and that I can talk about. And by the way, if anybody ever comes across, the most amazing kind of poker project and they're just missing the money, send it my way.
That's very exciting. Look forward to hearing more about that. And speaking of things that you're involved in, maybe people who know you from your main event run might not be as familiar with this side of you, but you're very philanthropic. I think you've raised like $500 million through various charity poker tournaments. I've been lucky enough to go to some of them. Just this year, there were some Super Bowl charity events in Las Vegas that were really fun. And then also, me and a few colleagues got to come to the Paramount Pictures charity event this summer with Commerce Casino. And that was a really cool experience, getting to be on the lot there in Hollywood. But what motivated you to get involved in that?
I'd always felt there were so many causes connected to people that I cared about that led me into, so a friend of mine has Parkinson's, and so that led me to learn more about that, and a friend of mine that got cancer, and someone in my family that had other medical issues. And so I think it first started because I cared personally about some issues that people I cared about had. And then I started realizing that poker was such an incredible way to bring people together for a cause. And so, I never planned on being famous. I just wanted to be successful as a poker player. The fame came along with winning, the one that I won was the right place at the right time. But now, what was I going to do with that? At least maybe I could do something with it more than just feeding my own self as business because I happen to be well known. So I decided to take about 10 years after I won and not do anything else basically for work except putting on these celebrity charity poker events. And during that span is when I did most of them. I think I did about 300 in 10 years. I was doing 3 a month for 10 years. It was crazy. One every 6 months is plenty, but doing 3 a month. Now, when I say doing, I wasn't fully producing all of those. I was just a part of it. I would advise them. I would help them. I would, lend my name to it. And I have access to so many wealthy people so many famous people, right? You need the celebrities. Then who's going to come to a charity event? People who can afford to donate, right? So you need wealthy people, investors, right? I have thousands of investors, celebrities. I have about 4,000 celebrity contacts, friends, acquaintances, what have you, that are interested in changing the world in a positive way through charity. And then you have to know how to produce an event, which knowing how to produce television and film, it's very similar, right? Producing live events, it's a very similar kind of thing. And I also learn from a lot of the best. And then I can now hire them. After I learn from them, we can all work together. And so after, I would say, working with certain charities, you start to realize who's doing it properly, who's doing it fairly, and who's upside down. There are a lot of charities that 90% of the money never goes to the people in need. It goes to building the charity and advertising and marketing and promotion. Like you'll see some really famous charities on television, you'll think they must be doing a lot of good. Some of them are doing almost no good. They're just funding themselves and building themselves and making themselves more famous. So I made sure that I was vetting these charities really well. The ones that you came to this year, I made sure that at least 80-85% of every dollar. Now, there are expenses. You have to hire people. There's almost no such thing as a charity that doesn't have expenses. But if 80%, let's say, of every dollar that you bring in goes directly to the people who need it, that's a great benchmark. And so I make sure now that I can give my time and energy to those kinds of causes. And the more of them that you do, the more it kind of fills your soul and you feel like, wait, so I can use poker, this game that I love, which is such a democratizing environment anyway, bring people together for a common cause. They can play poker, they can win prizes, they can win money in certain cases. They get to sit. How often do you get to sit with some of your favorite celebrities and like right next to them at a poker table and become friendly with them and have a cocktail with them? And it's such an incredible experience that the more of them I do, the more of them I want to do. I just don't have the time because it's so time consuming. But when it's the right one, you know, I have a lot of experience now. I've been involved in hundreds of them. And so I feel like I'm really good at it. And also when you're good at something and you're producing and raising and donating all of that money to a cause that you then know is going to really help people. And then you can see, so like the one we do at Paramount, they actually bring the families that we're helping come and join the event with us so we could see, oh, we're helping you. This money is going directly to you. It's almost like some of those charities where they'll build someone's home for them. Mm-hmm. You get to see the family moving into the house that you just built the home. It's a beautiful thing. And so, you know, my life is so fortunate. I've been so lucky in my life, and I've been able to always, you know, earn money and live comfortably and have such great friends and family. And this is my way of trying to, you know, have a positive impact on the world so that I left it a better place than I came into. And that doesn't mean that everybody should do what I do. I think we're all different. So some people have said to me like, hey, look, I don't have the resources that you have. I'm not, you know, I have to work every day. I don't have time to donate or money to donate to charity. But I believe that almost everyone, there are a lot of people who certainly are going through things that they can't, but the average person can donate an hour a week to a local food kitchen, to a homeless shelter, or even how about just someone that they know that needs a little help. Go over to their home and make them a meal because they're having a trouble, you know, feeding themselves. Whatever you can do. So imagine if everybody in the world kind of paid it forward a little bit. Even if you're struggling, there's usually an hour a week that you could give to just do something for somebody else in some way or another. It doesn't have to be money. It could just be your time. To me, my time is more valuable than any amount of money. So like if somebody said, I'd give you $1 billion, but I'm gonna cut a year of your life off from you. a year of health, a healthy life. Now, maybe if I had, the last year I wasn't healthy, yeah, I might trade that for $1 billion. But, just meaning that people don't value time enough. They value money so much, and your constant kind of struggle to make that money. And then what were you doing it all for anyway? So to me, the time that you would give to someone else, even just once a month, anything that you could give to someone else is such a big gift, sometimes more valuable than money. I know people need money, certainly. But if your whole life is about chasing money, Bill Perkins wrote this beautiful book called Die with Zero about, yes, you need to spend time and energy earning money, but it's about spending the money while you're alive so that you actually enjoy experiences, as opposed to not buying expensive watches. And nothing wrong with that if that's what makes you happy. But I found that most people, yeah, you're happy for about a minute, and then you just spent $100,000 on something that doesn't bring you that much happiness. That $250,000 car doesn't bring you a lot of happiness. It was a fun purchase, or $20 million on your house, when the same house for $2 million has almost the same amount of space, the same value. You could be spending that money on making your friends and family really happy and enjoying your life. So I think a lot of us, it's the way that we grow up. Look, we have media and all kinds of propaganda coming at us all the time, telling us that you have to work hard and earn and save and this and the way that the American dream is supposed to be if we grew up in America. I just think it's a little bit warped that we're not taught to value time, and that the time that we give to people is as or more valuable than money that you can give to people. Because, kind of like you teach a man to fish as opposed to giving him the fish. That you can, if for an hour of your time, if you could help somebody then earn on their own. I do that a lot. When people need help, I try to help them. Yes, certain people, we've donated a lot of money to, but there are people that we could actually just help figure out what is their real problem. It's not about the money they need today, because they're going to need more money tomorrow. It's about getting them to understand what their value is and how they can earn and how they can feel productive, and helping them get to that next step in their life so that it's not about money every day. So I think that, you were asking me about charity, but I think it all comes back to how I value my time. And I think that because I feel that my time is so valuable, that me donating my time and energy to these causes makes me feel like I'm doing something really positive for them. Yes, we're raising and donating a lot of money to a lot of these different charities, but it's about the time commitment, and it makes me feel really good. There is a selfish part to all of this. I do it also because it makes me feel good, and that I feel productive, and I feel that at the end of the day and at the end of my life, that did I do what I could for the people that I care about around me, and then the common good and all of society. I just, it's never just about the one thing that we're doing. I believe that anything like that, an endeavor, when you create a charity event, the people that maybe you're employing or inspiring, they might then go and pay it forward and do more good for other people. And that I've learned so much in my life. I've been a lifelong student of whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm just a sponge for information. I just love to learn. And I feel like I've gotten to a place in my life where I've learned so much, it's time for me to start teaching other people. So the more of these events that I can do, there's always a way for me to be teaching other people how to create these events, so that I don't always have to be the one creating them. I can maybe just be a guest sometimes, which is really pleasurable, and just coming to the event and enjoying the event. So that is my hour-long answer to your very short question.
Well, it's been very pleasurable having you on and talking to you, and I just had a few more general questions as we wrap up. And it's funny, you brought up Bill Perkins' Die with Zero. One of the questions I like to ask is for a book that you would recommend, but you said that one. Are there any others, or maybe just stick with that one?
No, yeah, sure. I mean, I do read, not as much as I would like to, not as much as I used to. I have to read so many scripts and that takes a long time, that I don't have a lot of time for reading for pleasure. But I would say, that's a really good one to recommend, Die with Zero. Because that should be a goal for everybody. Of course, take care of your children and your family and your loved ones. Maybe not completely die with zero, but don't take it with you into your grave, so to speak, where nobody ever gets to enjoy the money that you earned, just really taking it with you. That's a crazy, selfish thing, I think, and not donating it the way that you should to the people who need it, which sometimes are the people just closest to you, right? Your family and friends. And so, I would say that. And also, we're here at the World Series of Poker Bahamas. I am so thankful and impressed with what GG and the World Series of Poker have put on here. I think that poker players sometimes can get a little bit spoiled or feel entitled, that they just expect that everywhere we go and anytime there's a tournament, everything should just be perfect. And without understanding how much time and effort and work and teams and people from media and the dealers and the staff and everything it takes to put these things on and how much money it takes, that I think a lot of poker players try to find, well, wait, they might have, there might have been an extra dollar in rake that shouldn't have gone. Yeah, everything is not perfect. But if you really step back and appreciate how extraordinary this event is that they put on for us, and all we have to do is show up. Yes, you have to pay for it. But, you're probably, if you're a poker player and you were going to pay for this, you were going to pay for some poker tournament at some point or another. So the fact that they put all of this on for us, if you really look at it in a way that we are so lucky to be here, most people in the world will never get to play a super main event, even a regular main event, even a mini main event. We are in an extraordinarily fortunate situation to be here, to enjoy everything that's been put on for us. They treat me so well, and I'm just so thankful that I get to sit here and talk to you. I've made so many new friends. The cash games are so much fun. Chris Moneymaker and I are tearing it up in the PLO games last night and today, and you get to see some poker legends and some amateurs and really fun people, and then professionals, and it's such a great mix of everything. So you get to play cash games, you get to play tournaments. There's Nobu and Jose Andres and all these great restaurants that are on the property, and most of the time the weather is pretty perfect. We've had some wind and rain, but in general it's pretty perfect. And so, the fact that they take Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin goes down during the time or it goes up during the time, they'll match it for you, so you don't lose anything on Bitcoin. And PokerStake was offering to put up half of anybody's main event that wanted to post it on, for staking. There are just so many positive things that are happening within all of this. And there may be this huge overlay or even a small overlay that doesn't happen very often. And so, poker players love rakeback. And I hear it a lot, they want rakeback. They want to get something back for what they're contributing and whatever they feel like they deserve. And this is a form of rakeback when there is an overlay. And so, I'm sad that I busted out of the super main. Small percent shot that maybe I'll jump into day 2, but we'll see. We'll see. So just in case this comes out and I'm actually still playing, people will say, wait, you said you busted. They do let you rebuy, and you can rebuy directly into day 2. So that's always an option. You have, you're short, certainly. What do you have, like 12 big blinds or something? But I've been known to spin it up from the short stack like that and have some fun. So Yeah, this is such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a fun stop. I hope you are able to spin that up. And like everything you said, this stop is fun. I came to WSOP Paradise last year as well, and it was also a great time. Just one more question for you, Jamie, is what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I mean, how long do you have?
However long you need.
Wow. I mean, I don't live my life with regrets, but there are so many, if this was possible, if we are really living in a matrix or whatever that is, the quantum kind of way that you would think that, you could go back and kind of help yourself. I mean, we'll keep it in the poker world. So I would say, don't be so trusting. Realize that as many people as there are that are kind and genuine and generous that you should trust, there are so many people that you should not trust, and that you have to be really careful about people and information and making better decisions based on being informed as opposed to just jumping into things. And I would say that I wouldn't necessarily be more careful with the way that I lived my life, because I think I've lived it well and I've been really kind and generous to people, and I've had such an incredible time, and I wouldn't want to change it. I wouldn't want to do the butterfly effect where then my life might take a different path, because then I wouldn't have the experience. I wouldn't have all the people that I have. I wouldn't be here with you. But I think that if I knew a little bit more about how many people would try to take advantage of my kindness and generosity, maybe, that I could have saved myself a lot of stress in not trusting everybody that I trusted. But overall, I wouldn't trade it. And of course, I would have to tell myself to just, buy Apple and Google stock, right? Back then, yeah. buy Apple and Google. But no, I think it's just when I try to help as many younger players as ask me for help. And again, usually it's not about poker. It's more about how I can help them in life, because I've been a successful poker player, but I'm certainly not the most successful there's ever been, and I could have been more successful. I didn't take poker as seriously as I could have for a lot of the years. I'm taking it more seriously now, but I think that I have a lot to share and to teach outside of poker, which relates to poker, and that helping them understand who they should and shouldn't trust, and where they should and shouldn't spend their time, and how they're going to feel about it 10 years from now, and the logic behind it. Not just, oh, don't trust this one, don't trust that one. It's not about that. It's just that there are always going to be people who want to take advantage of other people who are younger and less experienced. And the more experienced we get, the more we realize that we should just be more careful. And that, that for every 900 people that are incredible, there are going to be 10 people, let's say, that are not to be trusted, and that we should be a little bit more careful with our time and our energy. Yeah.
That's great. That's some good advice. Well, Jamie, it's been a lot of fun talking to you, and yeah, like I said, hope you're able to spin it up tomorrow, and good luck in those cash games.
If I play, yeah, if I play.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
I appreciate it.